Hi, everybody. My name is Joan Fishburne from the University of Colorado, Denver. We're so excited to have you join us today to learn a little bit more about Parker Dewey. It's an option that we are looking to really expand as part of our offerings for employers because we think it really fits a nice niche in recruiting plans. So we're excited to learn more and to have you learn more as well. And with that, I will turn it over to Jeffrey.
Thanks so much, Joan. Really excited to be here. A huge fan of Colorado and CU Denver. Couple of very quick housekeeping notes. First of all, we will be recording this webinar. We will also be sharing the slides afterwards. So we'll send that around. My guess is early next week. In addition, I have the chat open, so feel free to use the chat if you have questions, comments, etc. I'll try to answer them as we go through. We'll also leave some time at the end for questions. If you see me looking over to the right, it's because I'm trying to keep an eye on the chat. So real quickly today, for the agenda, we're going to hit a few things. First of all, give a very quick overview of what's going on right now in campus recruiting. We'll spend a minute or two talking about what a micro-internship is, just to set expectations and understanding. Then what we'll do, to Joan's point, is we'll talk through 4 very actionable strategies that you can use, whether you're in the middle of campus recruiting, whether you're done, whether you're not sure where you're going to be doing this year, any number of different things. We're going to share some strategies that make it really easy for you to provide these great opportunities to the CU Denver students. And then, as I said, we'll leave some time for Q&A at the end. So with that, let's get rolling. So Parker Dewey, very quick background on us. We've been around about 10 years. 100% of what we do is help companies more effectively identify, engage, and assess individuals for potential summer internships and full-time roles. We do this through the concept of the micro-internship, which we'll talk about in a second. And we work with organizations ranging from one-person startups all the way through Fortune 100 companies. Again, part of what we're trying to do is create these win-win outcomes for the students, for the school, and for you as employers and busy professionals. Because we know that early career is facing a ton of challenges right now. For those of you involved in the National Association of Colleges and Employers, you know the cost per hire, according to NACE research, is north of $6,000 and continues to increase. And on top of it, we also know that about 50% of recent hires wind up leaving within the first year. So that cost per hire actually becomes even more challenging for companies. We also know from students that the current process of click a button to submit a resume and show up and do the phone screen or show up, it's not really allowing them to effectively learn about roles or demonstrate skills. What we've done and what we'll show you is how organizations can engage candidates and get insights on their skills before making a hiring decision. So imagine before setting foot on campus at CU this year, before the career fair, before the info session, before the classroom visit, having students from CU Denver already excited and interested, or when you are on campus, being able to have meaningful discussions that go beyond, here's my resume, or sharing the same information that the student could read from the website. Or maybe it's about keeping candidates excited after the visit. So you go to the info session, you go to the career fair. How do we keep students engaged? How do we keep them interested in our organization? Because we know they're not just clicking through emails anymore. How do you also get insights on their interest? Are they genuinely interested in your company, but also insights on their skills earlier in the process? And then for those organizations that might not be geographically close to CU Denver, the great companies in other parts of Colorado or even other parts of the country, here's a way to reach those amazing students, even if you can't be on campus. Everything we described is not sort of wishful thinking. This is experiential recruiting. Experiential recruiting is the intersection of employer branding and skills-based hiring. And when we talk about employer branding, we're not talking about what kind of swag or t-shirts you have at the career fair. We're talking about introducing your organization to students as a prospective employer. So if you're Nike, for instance, every student knows you, but they might not be thinking about Nike as an employer for a role in AI or technology or finance or HR or IT. Or maybe you're a company that's less well known, a company that might be smaller or might be even a large manufacturing. How do you drive that interest and awareness in those candidates aligned to your skills? The second component of it is skills-based hiring, which we know is top of mind for everyone. Skills-based hiring is really about assessing the talents and potential and skills of an individual in a way that's not really captured from a resume or a phone screen or even an interview. And when we talk about skills, we're not just talking about those technical skills. Can someone use Power BI or do a DCF in Excel? We're also talking about those core skills: problem solving, communication, attention to detail, coachability, etc. The way we do this all is through this concept of a micro-internship. So if we were together live, or if I had better Zoom skills, I'd ask by a show of hands how many people have heard of it before. But since my Zoom skills are subpar, I'll at least share with you briefly how we describe them. And again, we're going to share the slides. The key takeaway are micro-internships are 10, 20, 30-hour project-based experiences that organizations give to college students. These are professional assignments that are similar to what a college student would be doing in his or her first job at an organization. They can take place remote and year-round. And a couple of things to note: the tasks themselves don't require onboarding or training or access to your systems or information. These are projects that a student can do on his or her own, typically from their dorm room or library or elsewhere on campus. They're also not projects that require you to deal with any of the administrative burden. So when students are doing these micro-internships, they're not your employee, they're not your contractor, they're not on your books. They're actually employees or contractors at Parker Dewey, again, making it easy. And should you decide you want to hire one of them for that summer internship or full-time role, great, go ahead and do it. Again, we're not a staffing firm. So we use the term micro-internship, but it's a little bit of a misnomer. Think about a micro-internship as just another step in the recruiting process, just the same way you would go to, again, the info session or host an interview. As one of the college students described, and I wish I could come up with a better metaphor, think about a micro-internship like a job date, where a summer internship is like getting engaged, a full-time role is getting married. These projects just provide a way to go on job dates with the students. But as opposed to it being hypothetical, I'll show you some very real examples. So one of the things we'll do for organizations is they will send us the entry-level job description, like the one you can see on your screen with the data marketer role. On the left is sort of the meat of the job description. One of the things we do at Parker Dewey, will unpack it into what an experience can be. Again, a project-based experience with a defined deliverable. So for instance, when this organization was hiring for a data marketing role, let's give students the opportunity to do a competitive campaign analysis. Again, using public info, not sharing anything sensitive, it was able to drive interest by those students that may not have heard of that company, but also assess skills like market research or creative thinking or presentation. It could be a role that's on a factory floor. So again, you're not going to give the student access to a multi-million-dollar piece of equipment, but let's have them do a training manual development for a piece of robotic equipment. Again, maybe I need that manual developed, but more importantly, I'm assessing the skills. I'm seeing, does this individual understand the piece of equipment? How well do they communicate? Do they turn it in on time? We'll see it with development roles. Again, you're not giving access to a code base, but let's see, have a student do research on how AI is being used, or do some testing in UX. In all of these cases, the process itself is really an assessment. So we've created a little bit of friction, if you will, the good kind of friction for the students. So it helps overcome that application avalanche of click, 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 I'm applying for everything. When students see your micro-internships, they have to answer a short answer question or two. That gives you insights on, are they a self-starter? Do they have genuine interest in your company? Do they have attention to detail? As they're working on the projects, you're able to see things like coachability, or do they turn it in on time, or how do they communicate? And then from the final deliverable, you're able to see the role-specific skills or professionalism. And I'll show you some examples as we go through this. But the question always comes up, how do students do it? The answer is it's how they want to be recruited. So Parker Dewey actually does not allow colleges or universities, as much as we like CU Denver, to require it. 100% of the students on the platform are here because they want to be. And that's because 95% of college students said this is how they want to be recruited. They don't want to be flipping through job boards. They don't want to be sort of hearing companies saying the same things that every other company does. They want real opportunities to see what it's like in the role. Again, they want to go on a date. They want to learn about the organization. What's also been interesting is that students talk about the fact that when they're most interested in career exploration during their first and second years, that's when companies aren't actually engaging them. 75% of students say they want to start beginning that exploration, but they go to the career fair booth and they say, oh, great to meet you, apply next year for an internship. It's a lost opportunity. On the other side of it, companies are using this really to align to their existing campus recruiting efforts. So what we'll do is we'll walk through 4 very quick case studies on how companies are using it before the career fair or the info session to drive interest from students, how you can use it after you visit CU Denver to keep the students warm, how you can use it to get insights on their skills that aren't really captured from a transcript or a resume, and then if you can't be there this year, how to still continue to recruit the amazing students from Denver. So the first example is with a leading healthcare company. They had 2 very key challenges. One, there was massive competition for the allied health roles they were trying to fill. Again, think X-ray technician and the like. So what they were trying to do is figure out how to engage students who may not have been thinking about healthcare, those first and second year students, while also getting competitive advantage with those who were. The second thing they were trying to do is recruit for those roles outside of healthcare. Every student may have heard of HCA, but they may not have thought about it, to my earlier comment, for the finance or marketing or HR roles. Here's what they wound up doing. They created some micro-internships that were exciting for the students. So before setting foot on campus, they had a pool of students who were excited to visit the booth, excited to visit the info session. Again, not just the allied health students, but those from other areas. The projects were also providing a differentiator both when they were on campus to drive students to visit, but also afterwards to keep the students warm. So again, it wasn't about rehashing what's on the website or just getting the resumes. They were discussing the real projects that students could be working on. The other thing HCA did was they used these projects even before visiting campus to get insights on the skills. So they were able to focus when they were at the school on those students that had demonstrated their skills and also had ties to some of their other hiring goals, whether it was geography or otherwise. So again, this organization was very focused on using it before setting foot on campus. What about after the event? Well, this organization was finding they had great students show up and expressed interest, but we're looking at how do we keep them warm? And in this case, it could be the juniors or seniors that you want to keep engaged during that period between when you're hosting the info session or career fair and you're doing the on-campus interviews. Or in my earlier point, it could be for those first or second year students where you're building that pipeline for the future. Because we know in both cases, students aren't responding to the generic emails, and they don't really have interest in showing up to another webinar or info session or whatever. So this was a global medical device company, and they took a different approach. They initially focused on a high volume sales role that they had always had difficult filling. And they were very, very tough to fill for a few reasons. One, there were some geographic ties. They were looking for students with ties to, I think it was Memphis, Austin, Andover, and a couple other locations. They were also really interested in student athletes and students studying mechanical engineering. They had just found a ton of success when those individuals were coming into the sales roles. So when those students were showing up at the info session or at the career fair booth, this organization did not want to lose those students. So one of the things we did for them was we created essentially auditions for those business development roles. And we created them to both keep the students engaged, but also help the hiring managers assess the skills. So after the event, the students who visited the booth were invited to participate. Not only was it a success with all of the traditional metrics, I mean, email open rates, click-through, participation, et cetera, This organization found those other metrics that really matter were more effective. They were able to quickly determine who was the best fit, not based upon their GPA, but their actual work product, and allow them to focus on those candidates. So the first year that this organization did it, they did it with a relatively small number of business development reps. 100% of them are still at the company almost 2 years later, including one of the students who got an Employee of the Year award. So I mentioned before that first year attrition is typically 50% for entry-level hires right out of school. In business development, it's typically 70 or 80%. So again, this company had 100% retention. In addition, the hiring managers loved it. In the words of the hiring managers, they didn't, quote unquote, waste their time interviewing the wrong folks. And when they were hired for those full-time roles, they didn't feel like they were spending all this time onboarding and training, only to have someone leave. The third example is about sourcing and selection. So this organization had an incredibly strong brand. It was a national fitness chain, but they were finding a lot of the applicants they were getting were interested in the franchise locations. So they were spending way too much time flipping through resumes, back to that application avalanche issue. So this company took a very different approach. They went to hiring managers and they said, tell us about small tasks that you have that would come up that you just don't have time to get done or not the best use of your time. Tell us about articles you need written, job descriptions you need updated, all of these we should and I shouldn't tasks. So what was happening is they presented this to hiring managers as a perk. Here's a way to get help from really, really smart students on these short-term 10, 15-hour tasks. So hiring managers loved it, while at the same time, from a campus recruiting perspective, they were building this pipeline. So in one specific example, the L&D team at the company was looking to do some research on best practices for new employee onboarding. They selected 2 students to do the project. One was an HR major with a 3.9 GPA. The other was a liberal arts student with slightly lower GPA, but there was something about her that stood out. And they had the 2 students do the project. I'm sure you can guess where I'm going to go with this. The HR major turned in the work on the top, where again, one of the pieces of the deliverable was a 1-page summary. There's some good data in here, but there's also some typos, some grammatical errors, things that would be tough to see from a resume or even an interview. The other student, the one they were a little bit on the fence with, demonstrated not just her ability to quickly grasp the technical HR skills, but also the problem solving, the communication. And one area that shouldn't be ignored is empathy. Look at the deliverable and you can see that she quickly could empathize with what a hiring manager wanted in how she presented it. So beyond the fact it was helping them get work done, fast forward, that student wound up doing a summer internship with this company. And again, 2 years later is still there. And it's someone who the hiring manager, I think, said was probably not someone we would have even interviewed. So here's the last example. It's about data. And it's about data whether you can be on campus or not. Data to help guide your decisions, such as what schools or are there certain, how do we focus? But also data internally to demonstrate the effectiveness of your work, which is so important right now with early career hiring, under attack, or being questioned within so many organizations. This global Fortune 500 company had that issue. They had a very small campus recruiting effort that not only were they trying to defend, but they were actually looking to scale it up internally. So they were very focused on some of the strategic goals, one tied to location, because while their headquarters were in DC, they had locations all else or a number of other places around the country, including some very small towns. The second thing is they were focused on some community initiatives like gender equity in STEM, and they wanted to engage some of their ERGs. So again, like the other examples, we crafted projects that aligned to some of those roles, but what was different is they went to the members of the ERG and they said, here's a new initiative. We're going to give you the opportunity to not only get some work off your plate, but we're using this to create pipelines of students who we want to welcome into the company to really support some of those initiatives. Here's what happened. First, they were able to reach the right candidates. From a geographic perspective, not just the students with ties to their corporate headquarters in DC, but students with ties to places like Holland, Michigan, or Rockford, or Texarkana. They could also defend the cost internally. So one of the numbers they allowed us to share was the cost they were spending per school, which you can see is pretty big savings. They wouldn't let us share the actual numbers, but their internal cost per hire metrics showed it was a 70% plus savings. As I mentioned, also, they started with one of the ERGs, and you can see some of the immediate results. They were able to drive a broader candidate pool, but also keep the members of the ERG excited. Because again, in their words, they saw it wasn't just, we need someone like you for a panel or banners and t-shirts. They saw this organization actually was being authentic about creating those pipelines. One of the other things that was interesting to me is how many of the other operating departments came to HR afterwards asking to participate. So marketing had a member of the department within the ERG who had an experience, and the head of marketing went to HR and said, we love this. We want to do it throughout our department. And by the way, we want to pay for it. Are we allowed to? When does that ever happen within HR? And that's why it really was sustainable internally. And it works for employers because it fits within those existing processes. Whether it's at the very top of funnel about how do we access the students, how do we keep them engaged, how do we gain insights on their skills and ultimately convert, and the metrics are pretty compelling. The cost per hire, as I said, with the prior company was 70% savings. We've heard on average it tends to be between 40 and 80% cost per hire savings, about 70% time savings. And when students take these micro-internships, about 98% of them stay at the company at least a year, which is pretty compelling. So when you're posting these projects, not only are you getting the help on the existing projects, but all of those other insights around your employer brand or efficiency or conversion, data to help you make the decisions. So the question is always asked, how do I get started? Well, we've made it easy. You can use the link at the bottom, and I'll try to copy it and put it in the chat or the QR code. Send us a job description. Send us a spec for an internship or full-time role. We have an entire team here that will create some suggestions of micro-internships that you can offer that, again, don't require onboarding or sharing information. They'll be enticing to students, but also will give you insights on their skills. Challenge us. We love getting the company to say, there's no way you could do this. There's no way you can create a project. We'll tell you if we can't, but with 10 years of data, we're pretty confident we can. And think about how you can use it. Again, if you haven't been on campus yet, what a great way to engage those students from CU Denver beforehand, or if you can't be on campus, or maybe you were just there for a career fair, or you presented in the class. Here's a great way to keep those students engaged. Maybe you want to use it to get insights on their skills. Any of these things are great. And again, we've made it easy. So I'm going to take a breath and a sip of coffee. Joan, anything I missed or anything you want to add? You're on mute.
Sorry about that. No, I think this is terrific. I think especially for our students at CU Denver, we know that the majority of our students, because of the nature of our campus, are working either part-time or full-time, and a lot of them don't have the capacity to do a 20-hour-a-week internship along with the work they're doing to support their families. And so even from a student perspective, this fits in and fills so many of the opportunities that we want our students to have. Gives them a chance to connect, to gain professional skills, to practice being in the workplace. So I think it serves I think for every school it serves a terrific purpose, but I think specifically for a school like CU Denver with our student population, it is a terrific opportunity to tap some students that you may not be able to with a traditional internship.
I'm really happy you brought that up, and sorry if I glossed over it. I was talking too fast. I always want to make sure we don't go over a half hour. I know everyone's busy. I think it's really, really great. So again, companies certainly use it as a feeder towards traditional internships. But to your point, Joan, there's a lot of students that can't participate in traditional internships, either because, again, they're working part-time or full-time. They're student athletes. They have family obligations. What a great opportunity to not only give back, though it's nice to feel good, but also to find these candidates that are otherwise getting missed. The candidates who have the grit, the problem solving, the intellectual curiosity, all of these skills that so many of those folks have. But again, oftentimes they get missed in the traditional process. Any other questions from the participants? Did I do that good of a job hitting everything? again, my takeaways are we made this easy. We made it simple. Use the QR code or link, post a job spec, just drop it in there, or email us the PDF, whatever's easiest. We will create a project for you. You will not be on the hook for everything. You can see what it looks like. We can get it posted. You can see the amazing students who apply. If you change your mind, you can hit cancel and it goes away and you don't know. We've made this simple. So again, happy to schedule additional time to answer questions, or again, feel free to fill out the or to use the QR code or the link and just send us an example and we'd love to do something. So if there are no other questions or comments, thank you everyone for taking time during lunch on a Friday to join us. Joan, again, it's just such an honor to collaborate with you and your colleagues at CU Denver. We're obviously a massive fan of your program. I'm really excited to work with y'all and the folks on the call on this incredible initiative.
Well, thank you, Jeffrey, for taking the time to meet with us to support the students at CU Denver and really support our recruiters. We appreciate it very much. And again, it is something that I think really serves a terrific purpose both for our employers and our students.
It's a great win-win.
Yeah.
So with that, happy Friday, everyone. And as I said, we'll share the webinar recording and slides afterwards. Have a wonderful day.
Thanks, everybody.